Well, we knew we had him coming on a couple days ago, but I like to surprise the listeners. So out of the gates for the first 30 minutes of the live transmission today, Lou Dobbs, of course, syndicated radio host, former CNN host, host of Lou Dobbs Tonight on Fox Business Channel, one of their #1 programs over there, is our guest for the next 30 minutes. And I can't wait to pick his brain and get his take on the economy, the new war in Libya, the inflation. Who is Glenn Beck's replacement going to be? Could it be Lou Dobbs or Andrew Napolitano? I hear they're certainly being looked at right now from some of the Fox insiders that I know. We're going to discuss it all. But in this short few minutes we have in this opening segment, Lou, of all the things going on, what do you think is most important in the world today? What's #1 on your radar screen?
Well, #1, first of all, Alex, great to be with you again and have an opportunity to talk with you about these issues. The #1 issue, as far as I'm concerned right now, is restoring the rule of the majority to our government and making certain this great constitutional republic is led and conducts itself in concert with our national values and ideals, whether we're talking about foreign policy, whether we're talking about the wars that are underway in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Libya, or whether we're talking about how to restore prosperity to this country and to create jobs and wealth and to get this great country moving.
Well, when you talk about the Constitution under assault, undoubtedly, out of the gates, going back now 4 weeks ago, the UN comes out and says we have a resolution to start bombing Libya, and the president didn't even consult with Congress. At least Bush went and got a resolution for force.
Exactly, and by the way, the man whom this president is a candidate, accused of being a unilateralist, went before the United Nations and got their approval, support, and cooperation, as well as the United States Congress, and he did it twice, both in Afghanistan and Iraq. If you will, the contradiction is stunning on the part of Mr. Obama.
And now it's a stalemate, and they say it's not going well, so there's more and more discussions by top generals of putting ground troops in, not just CIA advisors.
Unfortunately, that's exactly right. And the military analysts with whom I've spoken, and a number of former generals who are very close to obviously the general staff of the Pentagon, saying point blank that they cautioned this administration against taking on Muammar Gaddafi and opening hostilities against Libya, and now they are cautioning against the ground troops because they have said from the outset that nothing can be assured without our forces on the ground. And as we know, whether it's particularly the instance of Afghanistan, Alex, we know that doesn't assure a timely outcome either.
No, it certainly doesn't, and that's 4 different major conflicts: Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iraq, and now Libya.
Right.
And we have the French pouring into the Ivory Coast, removing one thug, and now openly installing the other rebel leader, who they admit's been running around with his people with machetes, chopping up men, women, and children.
Yeah, the involvement of the French in the Ivory Coast, wherever the French have gone over history, as you well know, they have left independent nations that were former French colonies in horrible shape. The Ivory Coast being exploited by the West for its natural resources, most prominently oil. This is a mess, and whether one styles it as NATO or the French and the United Kingdom or the United States and NATO or just the United States, somebody needs to take a very deep breath and say, wait a minute, is this who America is? Is this who Americans are? Is this the nation that we want to be? And I think most Americans would say absolutely not.
Absolutely. The polls show that. Lou Dobbs, host of Lou Dobbs Tonight on Fox Business Network, lou-dobbs.com. We'll be right back with him to continue along this important line. It is Friday, the 15th day of April 2011, and we've got a real treat as far as those that want to know what's really happening in the world, with a wide breadth of analysis on the economy, geopolitical developments. He was one of the founding members there at CNN when it kicked off in the early 1980s. He, of course, needs no introduction, Lou-Dobbs, and he's the host at 7 p.m. Eastern on Fox Business Network of Lou-Dobbs Tonight. He also, from 2 p.m. Eastern on, also hosts a very successful syndicated radio broadcast. The website's lou-dobbs.com. Of course, our websites are infowars.com, prisonplanet.com, and gcnlive.com. And there's a host of issues. Donald Trump, does Lou think he's really going to run? Has Lou heard any word about who's going to be replacing Glenn Beck during that slot? What's his take on inflation, the budget? We're going to cover it all with Lou-Dobbs here today. But out of the gates, Lou, going back a decade or more, I remember watching you on CNN. You're the real trailblazer on mainline cable television. You were just going off their own statements, the UN's own statements, the Council on Foreign Relations' own statements about a supranational, private corporate banking world government, eroding national sovereignty, Media Matters, George Soros. Others really targeted you when you did it in a very level-headed, well-documented way. Really, you're the precursor on mainline TV of some of the things Beck did in a little bit more, carnival-type way. And I mean, I don't mean that meanly. It's just,
I understand.
And so here you are completely vindicated. You were always vindicated because you were just going off the documents and the elitist own statements. But now open announcements every day in the Washington Post, Financial Times of London, global government, private banking system, end of the dollar, Obama following the orders of the UN, not even consulting Congress to start this new war. Now they're talking about ground troops. What is it like a decade after you began to be the first to expose this on mainline TV, to be demonized, to be attacked, to have somebody shoot at your house, to go through all of this, to expose the North American Union, and now it's almost passé, but you were demonized for it?
And of course, as you know, Alex, that's the reflex of the left in this country, and I expect to be attacked for taking positions that aren't popular with the left, and that's fine, because my interest is America and Americans, and that is just where that's where I happen to reside intellectually, emotionally, physically. And I make no apology for being an American who is concerned most about America and Americans. It's that straightforward. And to see whether, and what my great concern in all of this over the years, Alex, has been, aside from a position on any one of these developments, so that our audience understands that when we make a deal with the United Nations, when we sign on to the World Trade Organization, for that matter, when we're part of NATO, we are, at some margin, at some level, and in some cases at an extreme level, consigning away this nation's sovereignty. And we are deferring national interest to a broader interest, whether it be a European interest, whether it be a global interest, or whether it be an Asian interest. It doesn't matter. But our leaders, our elites, have on too many occasions sought to obfuscate that reality and to act, to pretend as though there's no consequence or implication for the well-being of the American people or the national interest. And I find that to be not only hypocrisy, but frankly un-American.
Lou-Dobbs is our guest. Lou, when you, over the last decade, talk about globalists, talk about elitists, you would put up quotes from the Council on Foreign Relations, from Robert Pastor, from the internal SPP documents that Judicial Watch sued and got, and then Judicial Watch and others you had on your show had the documents, but still Media Matters and others would imply it was a conspiracy theory. But from your research, who are these international interests? Who are these elitists, and what is their overall goal? And from your research, why is that basically in direct opposition to the interest of our free republic?
Well, let me answer the latter part first, if I may, Alex, and that is this free republic, this great constitutional republic, is utterly dependent on an informed citizenry and an engaged and participatory citizen. And what is occurring now is a constraint of information. One would think that given the internet, all of the various media, and all of the vehicles of communication, that American citizens would be better informed than ever, know far more about the public policy choices that are being made, whether it's in Congress, whether it's in the bureaucracy of the executive, whether it's in the judiciary. But in point of fact, we know less today than we did 50 years ago about what our government is doing. And the reasons for it are many, but among them has been a decision among elites, and by the way, I'm talking about, frankly, both political parties, in one way or another, being involved in an effort to simply preside rather than to represent, and to do so with a view that they somehow are ordained to lead rather than dependent upon the consent of the governed. So when we start talking about the elites that are, if you will, not necessarily conspiring, but certainly acting as if they were in collusion and concert to create the North American Union, it's an empirical statement. It's based on fact. It's not a question of ideology. It's not a question of philosophy or partisanship. The reality is that the Security and Prosperity Partnership is the foundation and was intended as a foundation to bring three countries together: Mexico, the United States, and Canada. And that harmonization, as they like to call it, and I'm talking about the elites of the United States military and that of the Canadians and Mexico, our business elites, our political elites, and frankly, they're represented again by both political parties, are working to bring about not only a customs union, not only a common currency, but an actual consolidation of three nations into one.
Well, that's what's so frustrating, is that you are covering real information, like if you were a weatherman and a thunderstorm blew through and the water measuring meters said 1.5 inches of rain fell, and you're sitting there with the rain gauge showing the rain. Everybody knows this is happening. And then they're moving forward, these elites, with these programs, but then they have no respect for the general public and play this deceptive game of saying lou-dobbs is lying to you, when we have this ruling political international class that, as you said, tries to rule by deception and doesn't want the people involved in governing through their representatives.
Yeah, you use the word rule. I would use the word attempt to influence. And the effect in some instances may be the same, Alex, but what we are truly watching is an effort on the part of a group of elites worldwide who wish to bring about a one world order. It may not be particularly a new world order, since the effort has been underway for some time. But that is one of the tensions that's obviously at work in our global society.
And you look at this global order they're trying to establish, it's very undemocratic. It is against sovereignty. It is always openly anti-family. Anything that is independent, anything that they can't control, they want us dependent. That's what these elites want, these mega corporations that aren't free market. That's their goal. I want to read to you a headline, if we can put it back on screen. And I first saw this in the news in 2002, and when I would cover it, even in the Washington Post as a footnote, people couldn't believe it. But here is the Ottawa Citizen, one of the big papers in Canada, for those that don't know, February 22nd, 2008. This is 3 years ago. And there's new articles on this as well as part of the Continental Security Perimeter. And it says, Canada, U.S. agree to use each other's troops in civil emergencies. And if you read the Pentagon agreement with Canada and Mexico, it says we will aid each other during civil unrest. So, and I've had generals on who are retired that say, yes, this has been in the works for a long time, right, to use foreign troops in America and vice versa. I mean, it doesn't get any more crazy or New World Order than that.